Yeah, I'm a computational neuroscientist, which means that I use mathematics and computational methods to try to understand how the brain works. And throughout my career, I've worked on a lot of different systems. I originally started working on sensory systems, in particular, trying to understand how the brain and sensory systems transform information from the world into sort of the language of the spike code with which they communicate with the rest of the brain. More recently, my lab have moved into asking questions that are maybe a little more cognitive. We work a lot at the moment on birdsong, on trying to understand how the different nuclei in the bird's brain represent and create and learn and maintain the song. It's a sort of a great example where theory can really be applied in a very crisp way because we know what the song wants to be. We work with zebrafinch that only sing one song, and so you kind of have a template for what the bird is trying to do, and so that allows you to sort of assess variability, try to understand where in the brain that variability is coming from, try to write down algorithms for how that variability can sort of drive learning. So that's where we're. I guess the new habit that we've developed at home is that my youngest child, my little one, is 14, and they like many people this year had a lot of disappointments. They were supposed to go on an 8th grade trip to Peru that got canceled. They didn't get to graduate from their school. They've just started high school and haven't really been able to be on campus. But we're both huge fans of word games. And so we have developed a few habits of bananagrams and doing the New York Times crossword on Sundays, right? Both the things we used to do them very occasionally, but now it's become much more rigorous. We do that a lot more. So I've enjoyed that actually quite a lot. Yeah, I've had a bit of a strange trajectory myself, given my personal history. So I grew up in Australia, and I'd say Australia, and a little bit like the US, weirdly, these sort of Anglo-Saxon countries are sort of worse than average in their encouragement, I guess, of women in mathematical sciences. For some reason, there's sort of a historical dearth, I'd say, of Anglo-Saxon women compared to even France, Spain, countries that one might think about as more traditionally macho. So, I was sort of going it alone as an undergrad. And, I have to say, people talk a lot about role models. I definitely didn't have role models. And I'm not sure I personally sort of needed that, but I do think that there are, that it matters, right? That there certainly are many people that want to see someone that looks like them, that they can and I've had a lot of amazing women come through my lab, and I think that has helped them to proceed, because there are kind of women in the field that they relate to. And then I went to Israel, and as I was saying, there really is a difference between sort of Anglo-Saxon and more Mediterranean countries. There were a lot of amazing women in STEM in Israel, and it really did kind of give me a very different concept of how possible it was, right? That there are these sort of very high-powered, brilliant women who around me, right, getting their PhDs and as scientists, having kids, 3 or 4 kids even in their families. And I think what the difference that I saw in Israel was that the community there are very tight-knit, and family structure is very strong. And there's just lots of ways to help make that possible, right? That people have a lot of energy there, but that there are grandmothers and there are nannies, and there's sort of everyone comes together to make sure that the family unit works. And I think when I moved on, with my life, that idea that one has to kind of build, right, a community around you, to be a parent and to be a functioning scientist was really important to me. And so when I applied to jobs, I had a couple of options, but when I came to UW, and the other faculty, they sort of went out of their way to, I was actually pregnant when I interviewed here, and went out of their way to talk to me about their childcare. That Sharona Godden used to bring her babies into her office. My colleague Mark Binder, who's almost retirement age, he used to bring his daughter in and teach with her in a kind of chest pack. And so it was really a community that cared about family and sort of had a structure around that. And so that, I think, is something that I have regarded as very important. My lab, several of my students and postdocs have had kids, and we really try to make that a joyful thing, and to be supportive around that. It's a life stage that many of us are going to want to go through, and the more that scientists as a community can make that a normal thing and a happy thing, and that we're all kind of in the same team in helping each other, I think that that helps a lot. Obviously this is not just about women. This is another great change in the last 15-20 years is that men too are born to be very involved with their children. And so dealing with family as a scientist is something that is really I think changing in attitude and in community support.